Another Sunday, another case of the scaries to start your work week. Welcome to the newest edition of the Sunday Scaries, where we have all your gore, lore, and more, covering all the latest horror happenings, slicing open all the latest horror news, and dissecting it bit by bit, finding all those juicy innards. Pour that cup of coffee and turn on your fright light while we take you on a tour of terror. And Dylan, going through the marathon that is Splatterthon as well as the whole month of October, well, we just got out of one of the biggest films to drop in the horror community this year. Halloween Ends, and we have had plenty of different coverage on our end for it. I
Yeah,
don't know. I mean, if you've been checking out our stuff here on the channel, you know our feelings on it. We can't escape it, I suppose.
yeah, no, I mean, like it's been interesting. Um, you know, a couple of bigger channels that I like Dave McRae and stuff. Who, he's somebody that when Halloween 2018 was coming out, was somebody that I followed pretty religiously. I like his take on the shape and everything, and just how he presents stuff. Plus, he's also a short filmmaker. He did the recent Black Christmas short film, It's Me, Billy, which is pretty awesome. If you haven't checked it out, I know I keep bringing that up. We might want to cover that for Christmas
I
this year.
haven't
That
seen
could
it,
be
and I know you
cool.
brought it up, and I've been
It's
meaning
great,
to circle back and catch it.
and
So
it's getting a sequel.
for
So it's really
for
cool.
this December or not
I don't
anytime
know
soon.
about this year. I think it's going to be next year, but
Oh,
I
okay.
know that they announced that they're doing a sequel. But yeah, no, his coverage on this was something I was eager to find out about. And he's in the same boat with us. He sees this more as like an anthology story, less of a sequel to the last two films, where it's like he legitimately said the same thing we said in our breakdown, where it was just like, this would have been a better like fourth film of this new trilogy. You could have done this after wrapping up the trilogy. He just thinks that you can't jam two movies into one here. But I mean, he did have a lot of stuff that he did like in it, and he found some good points, and that seems to be the consensus here. And I've only seen it twice. I'm going this afternoon to see it with my dad and my sister. So that'll be my third go around with this flick. So we'll see how I feel about it after that. It's my second theatrical, which I do think tends to add a lot. So we'll see. I might do a little short, maybe just with like my third reaction to it, just to kind of get you out there. I know one thing that I feel like I didn't highlight much that I've kind of been regretting, just kind of going back on my thoughts on the film and everything, would be the guy who played Corey. I think I got so caught up in the things I disliked that I don't really cover much of what I liked. And I think that Rohan Campbell is a good actor. And I think that if he was given again, if this wasn't the third act of this trilogy, and this was just another Halloween film, I think that it would have been a better launching point for him, because I think he's really good. I think that there's a lot of sequences with him where he does sell it really well, especially the opening. Going back to it and thinking about it, how he plays the innocence of his character really well, and that slow descent into madness. I think that he definitely deserves props there, because it's like it's just unfortunate again that this is the movie that he has to be a part of in this franchise, because there is so much discourse and fans are so divided on it, and it's not going to satisfy either side very well.
And I think he put on a great performance, in my opinion, at the beginning. I didn't necessarily buy the going into madness as much. I did enjoy, when he was playing that more innocent, sympathetic character. And I do think, like, if we went a different route with this, he could have been our Tommy Jarvis in a sense. I would have bought him as that to kind of actually stick with him for a longer period of time. But when he really got into, like I said, I didn't really buy at the end when he's laughing sadistically with Lori and things like that. That's where I had the bigger problem with him. But at the beginning, I was pretty with it. I was on board.
Yeah, that I have issue with that scene as well, but I still think that there were a lot of solid moments. Like, I do Like again, probably my favorite scene is when they bring Mulaney into the sewer, and him and Michael team up on that. I think that that's pretty cool. I think like in coming days after, and after our big kind of therapeutic full breakdown there, I can kind of ease up on some of my thoughts on it. I will actually probably be able to give you a better feeling on that when I see it this afternoon, because I think like, now that I've kind of had that conversation, we talked for an hour and a half, I can just say, all right, I'm just going to go in and I'm just going to see this movie, how it is, and just go. I really think that overall, I some of the biggest stuff that's going to always bother me though is just how unsatisfying the ending is, and just
Yeah.
the final fight and how short it is, and feels so much like Dave McRae again said it pretty well, where he said that they just kind of jammed Michael Myers back in the script after they wrote like 90 pages. He says they're in there writing 90 pages, and then they're just like, all right, so you got to wrap up the Laurie and Michael storyline, and they're just like, oh shit, yeah, I guess I do got to do that. So
And
that's exactly how it feels.
it feels like it was a copy and paste from the original script. They're like, oh yeah, let's put this in here, and that's why it feels like a different tone. Just feels odd, but once those box office numbers comes out, I'm sure it's going to be number one at the box office. So I guess it's a win for the horror community to have another high profile horror movie kind of winning at the box office with
Hey,
what we've had for like Black Phone, and even Smile to an extent has performed pretty well. So I
it's
mean,
funny. I agree with you there. I don't want this movie to do poorly. I
not at
still
all.
want it to make a ton of money, because I want another opportunity at Michael's story again, or just even, at this point, more Haddonfield stories
Yeah.
again. Like if this movie wasn't trying to wrap up from 18 and Kills, and it was its own thing, I probably would have liked it a lot more,
Let
and I
me
probably would have been a lot happier with it.
Let me ask you a question real quick here, and just coming off the top of my head, we're going to get into something a little bit later in terms of long form storytelling, in terms of film series, or an actual film itself, kind of turning into a series, and we're seeing that a little bit more here with some news here. Let's say, would you be on board with something just called Haddonfield, and it is legitimately
Yeah.
an anthology story of what they were going to do with Halloween 3? Maybe it's just random stuff happening in Haddonfield, just I think this would, again, totally, where this wasn't prepped. We're just talking about it right now. I think this would have been a great, especially if we want to fill in the gap from 2018 to 2022, where they're saying that, all these weird things and people have been a little off since those. I think that would be a really great example of kind of showing that stuff in between and what happened while Michael was gone, and kind of just, you can even get into the supernatural aspect of it, and maybe hints of where Michael is and things like that, and just kind of tell that story for 10 episodes.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm already on board with it. I like the idea of doing that. Even if you want to do something like, um, do like a Halloween special. Like give this to, someone who's been doing really well in horror recently, Hulu.
Yeah.
Give it to Hulu. They can release an hour and a half Halloween special, just called Haddonfield, or shit. Just do what Carpenter wanted to do before and just call it Halloween or Samhain or something like that. The book of Halloween or something stupid, and just have it be stories that all take place in this universe. And you could say, even if you want to and you don't want to use the 2018 timeline, it's the beauty of this franchise. There's so many timelines. You could literally just say, okay, X-nay everything again except for Halloween 1 and 2, and then this is where we pick up. And then you can take your time to interlay things as time goes on. So like you could have a story that takes place 1 year in the 80s. You could have a story that takes place in modern day the next year. You could have one that takes, and you could just do that every year, and then we'd have something to look forward to, where
Yeah.
it's just like, and we'll get a little tease, kind of like how Marvel does it at the end of each year, of what next year's story could potentially be.
Yeah.
And then that would be a good way to like get, big names attached to it. You could have all kinds of people come back. Like you could have that would be a great way to incorporate like Dr. Chalice as character come back, like for a cameo maybe. Because like even then, you don't have to say just because you immediately start with saying you're following just after two. The beauty of just following after two is that you don't have to necessarily say up front that like Halloween 3 didn't happen.
Yeah.
You could lead into that later, or that Halloween 4 didn't happen. You know, like you could always tie those things in later. And like I think that's a great idea. I think that if you that would be a nice fresh take for this series, to do something like that, or like you said, a 10 episode series. You know, just give people more time to tell stories here. We can let Michael go, but you can always have his essence. And then what do you know? In 3 or 4 years of doing this, maybe they announce, hey, one of those teasers at the end of that year is we hear breathing, and then we
Yeah.
see a POV shot, and then it's like, oh shit, next year Michael's back. And it's
Yeah.
just like, what does that mean? So
And you know, with what we're getting with Chucky, I know we kind of go back to this all the time, but you know, it not necessarily that remake. I don't think worked out so well, so we're probably not getting more Child's Play. But in theory, we could have gotten Child's Play films happening simultaneously with Chucky the TV series and all this kind of two different universes going. And this is one where I think it would work best, where it's not necessarily competition, but it's more so they can be live in the same space simultaneously, and we're just telling Haddonfield stories that don't really affect the Michael Myers timeline, other than you know, we can mention it, and you know, it does tie in as long as, you know, you just make it all cohesive, but we don't necessarily need Michael. But like with what you're saying is, you know, we do it for a few years, whatever, and then eventually we tie in Michael to kind of prep for, hey, Michael's coming back to the theater,
mhm.
and this is our way of announcing it. I think that would be very intriguing, and to really open up this kind of what they kind of started with Halloween 3 to, I mean, you know, with the love that that film has got now, as we've talked about. You know, there's a market for this type of stuff, and especially, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
looking at Trick or Treat, where such an anthology based film that has a huge cult following that's bleeding into the general audience, where it's like there is a market for this kind of, there's a hunger for Halloween, and I'm just saying themed content. So it's like to kind of do these random anthologies, unique stories. I mean, you know, with what they're doing with Creepshow on Shutter, it's like that works perfectly. It all works out well. So it's like there's an endless supply here, and then you can even attach like you know how Guillermo's doing with the stuff that's going to be coming out, Cabinets of Curiosity, where it's like you can attach these directors to say, hey, this is like a Twilight Zone deal where we want you to tell a story. We're going to give you 60 minutes. And it's going to be in the Haddonfield, you know, 2023 showcase here during Halloween. We want you to tell a story, and you can write it and you direct it, and it's your own unique thing. I think that would work out so well, and I think it would kind of have a lot of meaningful directors kind of gravitate to it just because of the content, and you know, it's Halloween, you know, so it's like you kind of want to be attached to it.
Yeah, and I mean like the amount of like subtle references and ways you can kind of keep the continuity going and growing through all of that would just be wonderful. Because like I said, if you have certain episodes that jump to different decades and things like that, you know, you could see you could have a character who's talking about Michael Myers like it's such a recent thing. Like you could have one that takes place in like 1980, and so, you know, we're only 2 years removed from 78 and that horrible night in Haddonfield. And you can see like how leery people are still about Halloween. And, you know, even just spitballing here, this is not an idea I've thought of or anything, but like, what if it's almost like that sense of like Halloween's kind of still not necessarily outlawed, but more frowned upon, you know, publicly at this point in
Yeah.
Haddonfield. And you follow like some teenagers who go out to, you know, the woods or whatever, and they have their own celebration of Samhain, and then some horrible event, whether it's supernatural or not, happens to them. You know, and it's just like that's kind of where my head would go with it. And it's like you could really emulate all those tones that Carpenter feel. You know, have the same like you could, if you could, I don't know if they'd be interested, at least get Cody Carpenter and John Davies maybe to come back and produce the music for it every year. I'm sure
Yeah.
they'd get sick of it at some point, but like, it's just one of those things where it's like they could really just keep those tones and that feeling alive. And yeah, we're going to be talking about Halloween 3 at the end of this upcoming week, because it's got the 40-year anniversary. So we're doing a big video on that. We love that movie. We talk about it all the time. And I know I'm kind of jumping here from this, but it does give me some fear, but I don't want to dive too deep into it. And we'll talk more about it probably in that video. There's a lot of comparisons to Halloween Ends in the sense of it being like Halloween 3. I don't see it because it's like the only sense that I see it is that it's like, okay, yes, so people are saying that just because it's such a departure from what came before. But it's just like it makes me worried that the producers are again going to get cold feet, because I feel like the goodwill that's being built up over these the last decade here about Halloween 3 has gotten us closer and closer to the idea of stepping into that anthology route with this series again.
Yeah.
And I'm worried that the divisiveness of this film and those comparisons, if they run too deep, will make people like Malika Cod second guess about putting the brand into a story like that again. And I don't want that. I think that, again, the only reason that this story does not work for some people is because it's not a third act. It's a different movie.
Yeah.
And it is not a wrap up to what has come before. It's a left turn.
Yeah. And that's where it's like, I look at Halloween 3 different because in a sense it divorced itself from the Halloween franchise. I mean, yes, it's Halloween 3, but there's nothing of relevance in that film other than that they say that Halloween is actual movie in that universe. But where it's like we're not really harping on Michael at all to tell a story here. We're telling our very much a different story, and that's where it's like that is a true departure from Halloween or Halloween 2, whereas Halloween Ends really it wants to pretend that it's a departure in a sense, but we really need Michael to drive the story toward the end of the film, or else we can't get there, because this is again an odd choice to do some sort of departure attempt in this saga. You can't really do that because you're supposed to be telling a cohesive story. So I think that's where it fails. I mean, we've talked about it to a whole extent here. But I think like that the love for Halloween 3 and that kind of, okay, we don't need Michael. We can tell a completely different story. I think that there's hope there for it. At least I hope so. Again, this is a totally fresh idea. We didn't prep before we turned on these mics. I didn't even have this idea before Dylan started talking, and then so I mean, this is totally new. But as we're talking about it, I think there's a market here for this.
I hope so, man. But I think we need to pump the brakes on the
I did.
Halloween
Yes, we do.
discussion, because we've talked a lot. I mean, we've got 2.5 hours on Halloween Ends on the channel already, and we just added another 20 to it. So,
What can you do?
but I think, I guess you want to get the show started with the format here, my boy.
Let's get into the actual format with the kill of the week.
All righty.
Yes, kill of the week. And this one is as a pretty meaningful kill of the week. We have
Yeah.
gotten some somber news. That Ted White has passed away on October 14th. 96, I believe, is what he was. He did play Jason Voorhees in my favorite installment of the Friday the 13th franchise, the final chapter. So we had to do it. I was going to double down on another Halloween kill since Halloween Ends came out, and we have the Halloween fever. But then as soon as this news came out, I knew we had to pivot and do a little showcase for Mr. Ted White.
Yeah, it was either this or making it a full-blown news story, but it was just one of those things where it's like, I think the in memoriam segment of Kill of the Week is almost poetic for it. just because it's like, we don't have a lot of actors necessarily other than like Kane Hodder. It's not like with Michael Myers, where there are a few names in there that are pretty relevant. Nick Castle, now James Jude Courtney. He carried that mantle really well. Dick Warlock.
Yes.
There's a few names in the bunch, but like there's not many that you can really recall. A lot of them were either stunt actors or just people who, basically went nameless. I mean, they have names, of course, but they weren't as highlighted. But Ted White, very much, and you can catch this in Crystal Lake Memories, was one of those actors that took this extremely seriously. He went in there. You can see his interview where he said, "I didn't want to approach it from the idea of like a stunt person. I wanted to actually give Jason some weight and some purpose to his stride and how he acts and how he moves and stuff. He actually gave it a good deal of thought, and he gives us one of the best portrayals in the franchise for sure."
One of my absolute favorites. I mean, for me, Final Chapter's firing on all cylinders. Absolutely
Hmm.
my favorite of the franchise. I think it's easily one of my
Probably
best
my
franchises.
number two,
Yeah,
just because I love part six so much,
yeah,
but it's, those two could jostle back and forth for me
yeah.
all the time.
I think it's always a battle between those two, to be honest. But I don't want to get into a full blown out Final Chapter discussion because I know it's going to end up on Splattercast, and I will kind of want to save that discussion. So why don't we hop into the actual kill of the week?
Alrighty. So this is just such an iconic scene with him coming down the steps. Tommy Jarvis, who, again, another icon of the Friday the 13th series introduced in this film. And, this, a lot of people credit part three, and I know I'm jumping around here, as the definitive, like, that's where he gets the hockey mask. And it is. This is where I think it becomes iconic.
Yeah, because
Because
this
now it's got
is
the chop and everything, and it's weathered. It just looks so good.
and this is the first film that he has it on for the full thing. So it's
Hmm.
like this is really where I think the image of Jason the hockey mask becomes full fledged here.
Yeah, and I mean, just like the way they do it with the blood spill and everything, and even the makeup here, because they brought Tom Savini back because they were like, this is going to be the final one at the time. Um, this is all iconic
Yeah,
Friday the 13th. Like, if you talk to many Friday the 13th fans, they will say that this is their favorite of the series, and for
and
good reason. It's fantastic.
this is like this one to me feels the most complete in terms of effects, in
Oh
terms of
yeah,
story, where it was going. I think the characters are great. Pacing's wonderful, and then for if this became the last one, I feel like this would be a definitive kind of end to
it
Jason
would have
Voorhees.
been ultra satisfying,
Yep,
because this is exactly like, we've seen Jason go down a couple different ways at this point, but like that was in their mind definitive. Like, you
yep.
are chopping his brain, like his skull in half, you know what I mean, like hamburger style. And it's just like, it's it's rough, man. And I remember watching this for the first time and just absolutely loving it. It was my favorite. I think part three, I said, was my favorite for a long time. But like Final Chapter quickly overtook that spot after a few viewings. Because like when I was really getting into the series, it was just after 2009 had come out. It'd been out for about a year. So this is about 2010. And Walmart had all of the DVDs reissued, and they were all coming out, and they were like $5-6. So like, I'd go there and my dad and mom would let me get one every couple of weeks or so. So like I ended up with part three first, and then part four was right after it because we had rented it from Netflix, and I was just like, I love this. And I gotta say, the beauty of part four and what they do with it is that you can watch one through four, and it's all just one cohesive, it's not perfect as far as like a through line narrative, but the tone is so consistent, the characters, the way they're written, everything, it feels very classic Friday the 13th. It's not
Yeah.
till 5, 6, 7 where they start kind of varying in degrees of not only quality of the film, but also just like where they start to feel a little different. And I say part six is a perfect follow-up to four with that tone and consistency, even though it does kind of change it a little bit. It kind of gives it a little bit more fun, I should say.
Yeah, and that's where like you're saying 1 through 4 is like a complete story, and we had that discussion on Resurrection and H2O, and they tried to give like a definitive end to that, but then they were already pulling back on that as they were filming. Whereas Final Chapter was really like, no, we're going full board. This is the end, even though it wasn't. But they really, Tom Savini came back, like you said. This was everyone believed that this was going to be the end. Whether producers believe that or not, but it's like the direction there was this is the end, so it feels definitive. Like you said, you can watch 1 through 4 and be totally satisfied with the ending here. Now we did cut off a little bit. I didn't add the Tommy really going hard with the machete because it was a little repetitive. So I figure we just talk about that a little bit, where it's like that aggressiveness there again is very satisfying. Where it's like you get the chop in the head, and then he's doing what pretty much the whole audience would want to do, is just stand over Jason and cut him up into pieces with the machete. So it's like I feel like that ending there was so well thought out, and it was like, well, as an audience member, what would you want to do? And to put us in those shoes and be like, yes, this is the most satisfying thing that we can get. I really think they achieved it with this one.
No, they definitely did, because I agree with you that it is the best. Like, if you want to talk about it as like the segments of these 12 films, and just like, we have things like the Final Friday, which doesn't feel like, a great ending to the
Yeah.
series. They don't even try to throw that at you in the sense at the end there, because they have the Freddy gag at the end. But like, this to me is definitely that, like, okay, we're done. Jason's dead. Like, you can feel that. And funny enough, you make this movie, you pick this on, obviously with the passing of Ted White, but it's another installment where they hint at the torch being passed to another character in Tommy Jarvis.
Yes.
And we just saw that again in Halloween Ends, where we actually saw the essence being passed into another character and watch them go and commit to that angle. So it's just kind of like, that's interesting. That is
and I think this works on so many levels when we're talking about satisfying endings and things that feel natural and right. Where I think the Final Chapter is a great blueprint here in terms of what you would want in that kind of final chapter of a franchise. And it's like it's very hard, it seems, for a lot of these horror films, these iconic installments, to achieve what Final Chapter did with this kind of ending kill here. Because you get in this gray area where, you don't want to see Jason die. You don't want to see Michael die. You don't want to see Freddy die, because you've grown up with them. They're very much almost, the stars of the film. They're the selling point. So just as much as you love Laurie Strode or Tommy Jarvis and don't want them to die, you don't really want Jason or Michael to die either. So it becomes a kind of this toss up. But again, here, Jason was this icon already, but this is so satisfying because it's so well written. It feels real. It feels great. So that's why it's like Final Chapter. This is how you do it if you're going to kill one of your icons.
I agree with you, but I think we'll kind of get a deeper look at this kill
Let's
in
dissect
specific.
it a little more.
So I kind of took the reins on the first clip there, so I'll let you get a second. I feel
She's
like
such a great character because she plays this so strong, and I like the idea of Tommy coming down, kind of putting the child almost in that danger aspect, but she's coming up and really taking charge here.
Yeah, no, and I think that they really do well. I say with like, yeah, I'm not even gonna say the first 4 of these films with their heroines. Their final girls are all excellent characters. That's why it's like it's hard for me when they talk about like an ultimate Friday the 13th of bringing back some of these final girls on who they would. I mean, clearly for me, I've said it 100 times. Amy Steele is one for me that needs to come back. I think that there's a few, but I'd love to see her come back. And unfortunately, I don't know the actress's name off the top of my head. But I mean, I'd love to see her come back too, because she does, present a very different kind of character that we have yet to see. Because like in these films so far, we've seen more or less people without their family dynamics involved. They're just on their own. They're young adults out working for a camp, out with friends, kind of deal. Just camping. And now we see somebody who's got their mother and their little brother involved, so they have more at stake here, more to lose than just friends. Which, I mean, I hate to say it, I love my friends to death, but it's just one of those things where it's like it's a little bit more of an investment, I would say.
Absolutely. And I know we only usually play that one time, but can we get that one more time? I just want to appreciate the actual effect
No,
of what Jason
absolutely,
looks like.
absolutely. So yeah, and Tom
Speaking of fun.
Savini's a master, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because
Like in the swiping of the mask off here, it became almost a staple to have Jason lose his mask at some point in this. Some are better than others. I really enjoy this one. I find creepy, but the makeup here, it just um it seems otherworldly almost. In the blood kind of pouring out of the side of his head, that smile that he gives here, very well done.
hmm and it's like the only real inconsistency you could see with this series is the fact that this is technically taking place on Saturday the 14th.
Yeah.
In the timeline, the way they structure the story, and he does look drastically different than he did in 3. The only thing that I've ever said is that I like to think that he dies in 3 officially,
Yep.
with him getting the axe to the brain there. And I'm saying, like, I've always told myself that rigor mortis is starting to set in here, and that's why his like bone structure and face is starting to look a little more jagged and messed up. But it is also a fact that the body structure is completely different. I mean, like the guy in 3 is a much bulkier, a little bit of a hunch to him. It's just it's a different portrayal entirely. And I mean, again, we talk about it, but Ted White wanted to bring his own touch to the series, and I think he succeeded masterfully.
Yeah.
And
And
he is again, um, it's tough for me to say it, but he might be my iconic Jason. I mean,
yeah.
is there anybody else that you can think of other than Kane Hodder? And because, like, no hate to Kane Hodder, I love his, absolute dedication to the role. I think that if they were to reboot it, if you can get him in there, get him in there. Um, but to me, it's like those movies don't hold as much of a special place in my heart as these ones do.
Yeah.
And I think about part 4 or part 6 a lot more when I think about Jason.
And for me, I love the portrayal, like in this one specifically. Kane Hodder is an adequate Jason for sure. I'm not. I like the creepy kind of Jason. There's a scene in Final Chapter where he is running, and for me, it's absolutely unsettling just to think of this guy in a mask. You don't know what he looks like underneath there, just running in this wild manner toward you. Which during the Kane Hodder era, we don't really get that. He's very slow or methodic, more so after he becomes, I guess you would say, a little more undead, especially like in 6. Where this one, I think we still kind of get that creeper Jason a little that shines through a little bit and kind of unsettling. So like for me, these 2, 3, and 4 are really kind of my in terms of the aesthetic and in kind of how they're portrayed. I would say are really my bread and butter in terms of being creepy.
No, I agree with you. But alrighty, I think it's time we pay our respects.
I think we do. This is one of the ones where Jason finally ate it by Mr. Tommy Jarvis. So let's pay our respects to Mr. Jason Voorhees.
And then again, our hearts and prayers go out to Ted White and his family. Bring us one of the most iconic Jasons there is, and we hope that everybody there is doing okay, and that he's off in a better place now.
Absolutely. I mean, we this segment here is a little tongue in cheek. It's fun, but we really did this to just pay our respects to Ted White because such an iconic stuntman, perfect portrayals of a lot of different things. Obviously, we're talking Jason Voorhees here, one of the most iconic portrayals there is out there. Probably my favorite. Can't say enough good things. Thoughts and prayers. We lost a legend.
I agree.
All right, let's hop into our next little segment here that we call the history of horrors.
Trapped in the Middle Ages.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
Oh, of course. See, we are releasing this on October 16th. So, of course, we have one of the legendary films here, Candyman, directed by Bernard Rose, starring Tony Todd, and it's based on a short story, The Forbidden, by Clive Barker, who just had the release of Hellraiser as well coming out. So another chapter in the Clive Barker series there. Dylan, you haven't seen this one yet.
No, I have not. I do plan to get around to it. It was one that actually I think we were gonna cover at one point when we did the first iteration of this show, right?
Yes, this has always been on my list to cover, certainly. One of my favorites as a kid always freaked me out doing the Candyman in the mirror, but with my brother and sister always weirded me out thinking that the man with the hook was gonna come through my mirror and get me. But yes, this is one that's always been on my list. I think there's a lot of socioeconomic kind of commentary here that I'm very intrigued for you to actually see and witness. A lot of great horror, obviously, great story in general. Yes, but this is one we will definitely cover in the future. It's been on the docket for a very long time, and we are definitely going to get to this one.
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm excited to see it. You know, I'm a huge fan of Clive Barker's stuff now that I've kind of gotten to take the dive and go down that rabbit hole. So it's like, I'm starting to understand why he is such an icon. But I mean, like I've liked Nightbreed. I watched that a few Halloweens ago. I really enjoy that film, which that'll be one, of course, that I'll be throwing up there as well to cover. So there's plenty more Clive Barker to go around as we continue on with the podcast for sure.
Yeah, and I mean his work has such a specific tone to it. And Bernard Rose actually had written um, Candyman as well, kind of got the blessing and the rights from Clive Barker to bring it's The Forbidden is a UK based story. He brought it into the US with Cabrini Green and public housing and things like that. Really brought it into that realm, kind of a different story in terms of relatability for people from the US. So very intriguing. Clive Barker always comes up with these very unique stories. I mean, Hellraiser's definitely on its own playing field. What he has Midnight Meat Train as well.
Oh yeah,
So there's
which
a
has
lot
a
of
pretty
these.
good remake from what I understand from a few years ago with Bradley
Yes,
Cooper.
and I saw it when it first came out. Haven't revisited it, but I remember being pretty pleased for that one because I think it was a lot smaller than what I had realized at that time. Because I think it may have been in the theaters, but a very limited run, and it had always played on Sci-Fi or something like that. So
Mhm.
definitely one that I think we may dust off at some point because I think there is something there as well.
Oh yeah, no, I would definitely like to get into more of his stuff. Like I said, at this point I'm on board. I understand kind of where he goes with seeing that in Nightbreed. So like if we can see what other great stories and things that he's been able to get brought to the screen, I'm all for it.
Yeah, and Candyman is one of those absolutely iconic. Came out in 1992, I believe. Really
Oh, and
put
Tony
Tony.
Todd too. Like we
Yeah.
didn't even cover him yet. Like what a
Um,
fantastic actor.
Man, I could not imagine any other casting there. This is a guy where I think we've talked about. I don't know if it's been on the podcast or before we've turned the mics on, but where Tony Todd is such an unsung hero that you thought maybe that something like this would open up so many doors for Tony Todd. Where he really doubled down on the Candyman persona, and it's like he is someone that I wish got a bigger shake in Hollywood to kind of really show what he is capable of doing because what a presence he has on screen.
Mhm. Not horror related at all, but one of my favorite casting choices in recent years for a video game. He is going to be doing the voice of Venom in the
Oh yes.
Spider-Man 2 for PlayStation. And dude, I am so looking forward to that. Like he is such an iconic voice as is. So the fact that you're bringing that to a character like Venom, I'm just like, oh, he's gonna be perfect. Like he will be, I think, going to be maybe there's a chance, just like how Keith David is like my definitive Spawn, he could
Yeah.
be a definitive version of Venom for me.
Yeah. Tony Todd is especially I'm excited for you to watch Candyman because you get a lot of those audio cues just hearing him talk while he's not even on screen, and I mean it's just so scary. Like he brings such a different level of terror with the Candyman character. It's just so great. You can't get enough of 'em. I know that the sequels are varying in quality. I actually haven't seen the newest version of
Neither have
Candyman
I.
yet.
I meant to, but I never got around to it. I heard mixed things when it came out, but I've actually heard a lot of people say it's pretty good since
Yeah,
it's been out for a while.
the Candyman series is really one that I wish kind of upheld that quality and kind of kept going in terms of that because, again, Tony Todd is such a strong actor and gave so much gravitas to this character that I really wish that we kind of got more sequels that were kind of upheld as that original 1992 film was.
I agree with you, and I can't wait to take that dive. It's on my digital library, so I bought it a few years ago. I just, like I said, haven't really gotten around to it, but I will get there at some point.
Obviously, such a good film, can't recommend it enough, and yes, it will be on Splattercast in the future.
Oh yeah.
All right, so now we can get into our actual tidbits of news for the week. Here we go. You all right? Okay, we got it.
Yeah, I
We
don't know.
got
It
it.
just
We're
was
here.
glitching there for a minute. It wouldn't go up, but anyway. Sorry,
Let's
technical
get into it.
difficulties on the Sunday Scaries.
We got back on track. Real friends are hard to come by, and producers Jason Blum and James Wan aren't making it any easier. The trailer for Megan just dropped online, which sees an AI lifelike doll programmed to be a child's greatest companion go a little crazy. The film is set to be released in January, and with her killer dance moves, Megan seems to be a film that will be both unsettling and unique. Could we see Megan join the ranks of Annabelle and Chucky as the next toy gone terrible? Or will we throw her in the toy box with the Furbies and Tickle Me Elmos of yesteryear? Now, Dylan, I think this was I had seen this trailer online when it dropped. I think the first time you had seen it, from your reaction, I believe the first time you had seen it was during Halloween Ends.
Yes, I saw this come out, but it was one of those things where like this week was so hectic with trying to get the video essay up and all the other stuff we had going on with the Better Off Dead segment, and it was a busy week, man, and I was really just trying to balance that life and everything, and I knew if we don't cover this in and of itself, we'll probably talk about it on the Sunday Scary, so I'll watch it then. And man, yeah, that was the first time I saw that trailer, and I was pretty into it for a little bit there. But there's a couple of shots in this trailer that I audibly just laughed out loud, and I mean, like, I think it's creepy, and I am intrigued to see the movie. It's got my attention, but it was just one of those things where I was just like, oh my god, what the fuck is this? Like when
It,
she's galloping at that child in the forest. I'm just like, oh my god, creepy as fuck.
honestly, because I had seen this trailer, and I'm like, okay, okay, looks a little weird. And then as soon as she drops on all fours, I was like, oh my god. And that's honestly what I was waiting for when we were watching that trailer. When I realized you hadn't seen it, I was waiting for us to get to that bit and just to see your reaction to hit her getting on all fours and just running straight through the woods. This one for me looks really different. I'm intrigued to see where the story goes. I mean, her appearance in general is very unsettling.
It is. It's that
Um,
uncanny valley kind of stuff where she definitely looks human, but not human enough.
Yes, and so it's like we're somewhere in this limbo, and I think that kind of brings a different element than like a Chucky or an Annabelle, where it's like almost human-like but not human-like enough. So even when she's not doing anything, and before until she like technically malfunctions, you're still unsettled by her, because it's like there's just something off there, and like I do like the kind of buildup that we're getting there, where she's almost like an Alexa where she's giving you so much information that you didn't ask for. And we're sitting at the dinner table and she's kind of ranting about everything. And then the mom just decides to, shut her down. And then she looks over and says, I thought we were having a conversation. I think that was a good beat in the trailer to kind of show exactly what the circumstance is here. And it does play pretty terrifying for me.
Yeah, no, it was definitely had some unsettling moments, for sure. And this is just another doll to throw in the pile of killer doll films, as they have been mighty popular, I'd say, for the last decade here. I mean, Chucky before that kind of owned the scene, but then you have like Annabelle coming in, and now she's had what, like 4 movies if you
Yeah.
count all the Conjuring flicks that she has a little part into, and then 3 of her own. Oh my God, so she's got like 5 films that she's a part of. And then now you have Megan joining the ranks there with, Chucky dominating television right now and all that. So it's just like, this is definitely something I think that sticks with people. It's, I've said it before where it's like, it's not a route that I particularly like adore this kind of film or this kind of a segment. From in my mind, took me a while to get on board with Chucky himself, and he's the most iconic. So it's one of those things where it's like now that I'm on board with that, I kind of have my fill of it. But I mean, I think that this has gotten enough traction, and I think that with it coming out in what, January, I
Yeah.
think it is. Yeah, so it's like there won't be a lot coming out that month in horror anyway. So I think, oh, at least I think so. Scream's not coming out till March, right?
I think that's right.
Okay, so like, it's one of those things where I'm just like, well, this will at least be, something for us to watch and review. So it's like I'll go see it. And just for the galloping sequence alone, like whether this movie turns to be laughably bad or a genuinely unsettling, like that's kind of where it sits for me right now. Is I don't know where it's gonna fall. Of course, I'd like it to fall in the genuinely unsettling, but we're just gonna have to wait and see on this. I think it's an intriguing concept. It is ground we've covered before, but it's just something where it's like if we're doing it and you got James Wan attached to it in some capacity, then I'll give it a watch.
Yeah, and I think this film knows what it is. Where you're cutting in the trailer where she's dancing a little bit, and so
Yeah,
I think they know that it's gonna be, you can play it downright terrifying, but then you can also have these moments that are like, this is a little wild. Where it's like I know I've seen that meme of her dancing pop up quite a bit over the last week on the internet, where it's like
the
people
GIF.
have taken that and just ran with it. So, and they knew what they were doing in terms of kind of getting a buzz for this film. And I've seen it everywhere, so I mean it worked. I'm intrigued. I do want to see this one. Being released in January. Those are usually the slower months, so we usually get 1 or 2 horror films maybe released that month. So it's not going to really be a heavy month for us. So it's not really much of a big ask, other than the weather, but to go out to the theater to check this one
Yeah,
out.
for
So
us
yeah,
being in Northeast Ohio, you never know what it's gonna be like at that time. So
yeah, so we'll see. I'm intrigued to see it. I think regardless, this isn't going to be something that's going to be, if it turns out to be kind of bad. I don't think it's going to be one of those things where we're sitting in the theater waiting for this to be over. I think it's still going to move because of these moments that they have in here, where it's going to be either laugh out loud funny or downright terrifying. So this one, the jury's out in terms of quality of where this is going to go. I'm a fan of the design. Like I said, she looks really unsettling even when she's not doing anything. When she's sitting there amongst the toys, she still looks freaky. So I'm really intrigued to see where this is going to go. I think I could easily see this become a franchise, just because a lot of these killer doll things tend
take
to
off. Yeah,
milk it, yeah, as much as we can. I think Annabelle is really responsible for kind of this resurgence because Conjuring was such a hit with general audiences. I think that's kind of why, I think Chucky was going to come through regardless, but depending on if he was going to actually get a TV series like he did, I think was kind of dependent on, if there was a market for this type of things, which I think there is right now. I think, there's been a market for Annabelle for a while. Chucky's back on the scene and he's doing big things. So, it's like I can expect, this Megan to be one of the next, but not the last. I could easily see us in the next year having another killer doll film coming out, with a different concept or something. This one being AI. They tried it in that remake of Child's Play, which I don't think really worked. But this kind of, I don't know if it'd be a malfunctioning AI or how this is going to go. I think it's an intriguing concept. She's got a personality to her. Definitely a different look. So I'm intrigued by this one. I'll definitely go out to the theater to see this one in January.
no, I agree. We'll be there. We'll definitely check it out and get you guys a review and let you know our thoughts on the next possible iconic killer doll to step into the ring. We'll see, but
We'll take her out of the toy chest and see what happens.
only time will tell.
All right, let's hop into our next little bit of news. It looks like Marvel is taking Blade out to the shed for some sharpening when it comes to the story and script. Blade has been put on hold indefinitely while they figure out production problems, as the director Bassem Tariq left the project a few weeks ago, as well as Marvel asking Bo DeMaio to rewrite the entire script from the ground up. While this sounds controversial, I'm already stumbling over all the controversy here. Well, all of this is controversial news. It looks like star Mahershala Ali will be sticking with the project as the title star. Being one of the most anticipated films in the MCU's next wave, is all the blood drained from this project before it even got started? Now, this one, I'm a huge fan of the original Blade with Wesley Snipes. I think a lot of people are.
I love the first two. I like them a lot.
Yeah, I think that's the consensus, where that third one is.
Yeah, I watched them
Very
recently within the last year here, and they were pretty solid. I enjoyed them. I guess more last year, but they were definitely of that higher quality. And like we said in the Spawn, podcast, they are definitely kind of a precursor
Yeah.
to a lot of what we're getting today with the recent Marvel stuff. So it's like they kind of were one of those things to kind of really kick off the superhero genre, because it's like I think like you have things like Blade and Spawn kind of stumbled, but like Blade was definitely something that with that we get X-Men, and with X-Men we get Spider-Man, and then everything kind of is history after that. So it's interesting, this news, because you attach a name like a two-time Oscar winner Mahershala Ali, who's just a fucking phenomenal actor.
Absolutely.
Like, well, I have yet to see Green Book. I know it's been years. I know he won for that film, but his performance in Moonlight, and that movie in general, is one of my favorite films, I think, of the last decade. I think that it is just such a wonderful story. It's beautifully paced, the way they tell it, and his character is such a diversion from kind of what you'd expect when it comes to a character that is doing what he's doing. And I don't want to just like make this a whole dissection on Moonlight, but like it is one of those films where it's just like when he is on screen for that first act, because he's only in the first act of the film, it is just like he commands it. He literally commands every single sequence. I always think about how that film opens, and how his car pulls up and he gets out, and it's that one take where they're just going around in circles, and you see him just like owning the presence, and then everything going on forward. It's the dude is incredible. And when they announced him as Blade all those years ago, I was just like, that is perfect casting. He is going to carry this. He is going to be a great staple to have in the MCU. It's another big check mark for them as far as their like catalog of actors that are in these projects. So this sucks. Like this, like, not for lack of a better term, this is super unfortunate that this kind of seems to be falling apart a little bit. And I know that there has been a lot of reports that Mahershala Ali is very frustrated with how things are being handled on this film, because I'm sure, and he has said that this character means a lot to him, and for him to be in the MCU, it's a big deal. But
Yeah.
like it's I worry that he might walk. I worry that if they don't get this together within a year, he might walk off the project. And at that point, I don't think that they should go forward with a Blade just yet. I think that at that point you shelve it indefinitely and move forward, because like at this point you've already built it up so much for me to have him walk off. It's like the casting would have to be like, it would have to have been like Michael B. Jordan or somebody else of that caliber to take it, and he's already in the MCU. So it's kind of like, what do you do?
Yeah.
Like,
And this is, we've talked about it. It's no secret that I'm not really a Marvel guy anymore, where, I kind of got flooded with content where I'm still in that period of, I need a moment to kind of collect my thoughts. But when they were announcing these properties, and Blade was one of those properties, this was one that I was going to make it a point to go see, because I do
Mhm.
love that Wesley Snipes incarnation of it, and having Mahershala Ali kind of being cast as this, the guy, like you said, he's an all-star actor. There are some actors that kind of need, you know, they're great actors in certain roles, and it's like they need that role to really be firing on all cylinders, where Mahershala Ali is just, he can take anything and he makes it work. So to take like the character like Blade, and you're already casting a guy that is just an A-list actor, can really do anything, and to bring the concept, because I think Blade is one of the most intriguing comic book characters in terms of
Oh
his
yeah.
backstory and everything. So to kind of have him injected into the Blade series as that main character, I was like, this is perfect. This is something I'm so excited about. I don't really need to know the story, because I think that it's going to be just perfect all around. And then we start getting all this kind of, maybe the script is so, and we need someone to come rewrite everything. Then it's like, how, I don't know what goes down on sets, but how are you not prepared for this? Because you do this casting, it's such a big property. You really have to hit this one out.
You might have to rein me in on some of this too, because I keep up with all the Marvel shit pretty well. But even I have been saying, and I'm a diehard like fanboy all the way. I'll be the first to admit it, that this last phase is really starting to get to that point of fatigue for me. And I know for you, honestly, you felt fatigue in the highest point of this franchise.
Mm,
And that's unfortunate, but I'm post Endgame has been rough. We've had some winners, we've had some great things. Their most recent output with Werewolf by Night, fantastic. We loved
absolutely.
it. And for Blade, who would definitely play in that same universe, and they would have him and Werewolf by Night together, or Jack Russell, I guess I should say. Like those two characters would end up on screen together with like Man Thing, and the Marvel Knights stuff. Like that is so primed for giving us something really unique and different with Marvel. And it's just, again, it sucks that this is kind of what's happening, but it all comes down to the fact that we're not dealing with the same animal that we had pre Endgame. Once Endgame happened, they Disney Plus started to come out, and then everybody was like, well, now we want shows. And now it's kind of like, well, we can use the shows to make up ground for characters that didn't get as much stuff, like Hawkeye and War Machine and all this, and that makes sense. That's great. But then they're like, well, let's use shows to introduce characters, and some of those are fine, but like, I watched Hawkeye. Do we need an Echo solo show? I don't think so. um She-Hulk is good. I like She-Hulk, but like, it's one of those things where it's like, maybe save her for a movie at this point. It's like, I don't know if like we need to be spreading ourselves so thin here. And it's no secret, if you keep up with it, that Kevin Feige is spread out. Like there has been a lot of rumblings that he is spread out and exhausted, because he has his hands in every single one of these projects, whereas before it was like he could shepherd each one of these films as they were going out, because it was like, what, 2 Marvel movies a year
Yeah.
at most. And now it's 3 Marvel movies, maybe 2, and like 6 TV shows. Like it's a lot. And you're starting to see that with the content output isn't as strong. And then you're starting to see it with the fans, where everybody's kind of like, okay, another Marvel show, or I'll get around to it, kind of thing. You're starting to see shows where it's like, I liked Moon Knight, and I think that Moon Knight had a lot of great stuff, but Moon Knight should have been a lot better than it was. Moon Knight should have hit a lot stronger. I mean, with that cast in general, you have Ethan Hawke, and I don't know why his name is escaping me. I love him.
Oscar Isaac.
Oscar Isaac. Yeah, it's like, they were so good in the show, but like the show kind of feels pretty aimless there for a little while. And it's great. Have you seen Moon Knight?
I do. I did see it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, I think that there's a lot of good moments, but again, it does have some dull points,
Yeah.
and it shouldn't be like that.
And it's like I was a fan of Moon Knight, as much as I could be, I suppose.
Hmm.
Where I'm still recovering from Marvel in general, but that's where I think we. I was a big fan, and then I kind of got tired of it. Where we had the usual suspects in terms of Thor, Iron Man, all these guys, and this is like where I feel like Marvel's at its most critical point because we are kind of getting into, like you said, Moon Knight, uh, Werewolf by Night, Blade, all these kind of niche characters a little more. They're not the usual suspects. They're kind of maybe have a maybe darker dynamic to
They
them.
do. They would
Um,
be under like a Marvel Knights banner, which has
yes,
always been a darker, more violent, more gritty kind of storytelling, even in the comics.
and that's where it's like I think it's at a critical moment here where it's great for Captain America, Iron Man. Those guys can reach a general audience without too much controversy. But here you really have to tote that line where um, you have to appease a general audience because they're still indoctrined from all the previous Marvel content, whereas now you have to kind of also appease everyone who is a fan of these characters and want that darker tone. So you kind of really have to, it's a balancing act here. So to kind of start showing your cracks now is not a good sign. So it's like,
No.
because Blade is one of those, going back to that Wesley Snipes incarnation where it is pretty dark. And they kind of had that luxury because Marvel wasn't as big as they are now, with Disney and everything, where they can very much do their own thing. If they wanted to go dark, they can go dark. But now they kind of really have to tote that line of appeasing both sides. So you really have to have that strong script that's going to really showcase Blade's backstory, and then kind of the kills that would ensue there, and that kind of tension that they're going to build. Because again, this is such a dark tone. And you have to, when you're playing with something like vampires here. I haven't seen Morbius, and I don't know what kind of
Morbius
tone that
doesn't
thing has.
count. Morbius is not
Um,
in the MCU. So
I,
what they fucked all that up with Sony and everything.
yeah,
When because I don't know if you know the full getup because you haven't
no,
seen No Way Home, have you?
no,
Okay, so like Venom 2 comes out and Venom gets transported into the MCU in the post-credit scene. No Way Home comes out. Everybody's like, "Oh shit, they're tying in all the Sony stuff now." Whole movie goes by. We cut to the post-credit scene and it's Tom Hardy sitting in a bar, the same bar that he got transported to at the end. And he literally gets transported back to the Sony timeline. Never interacts with Spider-Man, never anything. The only thing he does is leave a little bit of his goo behind. So it's like, oh, well, that's how we're getting the black suit in the MCU. And it's like, could have totally left that separated and it never would have mattered.
yeah,
So it's just like, it's one of those things where it's like, Morbius hadn't come out yet, so it was kind of like, okay, well, Venom people like it. I wasn't huge on the first one. The second one was all right, but I liked the portrayal. And Morbius was like, okay, if they could get Morbius, cool, and like if that works out, then we're good. But Morbius was shit and turned into a meme, so now it's kind of like, okay, good. Like let's keep the Sony stuff separate. Like let's just keep moving on with what we're doing.
okay, so that's no indication of anything. So whatever. So I'm curious to see what they're going to do with Blade here. I don't expect this to be a long layover. In terms of how long this is going to be out of production. I could say maybe a few months, maybe. And see where they go. I think they'll pick up sooner rather than later on this one, just because I don't feel like Marvel's going to hesitate. What they've already knocked back a few of the release dates for a
Yeah,
few
a
things from my
lot
understanding.
of things got set back from what I understand. It's not just this project, but this project I think is the kind of the tipping point for it because that's the problem is these movies are so interlinked at this point too that like you set something back. Like another thing that happened was Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness was supposed to come out before Spider-Man, but they wanted to rework some stuff with Doctor Strange, and Sony would not push back Spider-Man. They
Oh,
said
okay.
Spider-Man is coming out when it's coming out. So it's like, that's why we got it the way we got it. So it's like, yeah.
Okay, so with this, I feel like they're probably going to hustle to recalibrate what they need to and kind of get this thing moving. Whether that's good or bad, who knows? Until we actually see the film, I'm just curious to see what kind of tone we're going to get. That's kind of Werewolf by Night was such a great little treat for me, and I was a fan of Moon Knight as well. So kind of going into Blade, I'm excited for this darker tone of things. This obviously we do Splattercast. This is a horror based channel, so it's like anytime we kind of get those glimmers of horror in these kinds of characters, I'm absolutely for it. So I'm very intrigued.
Marvel
Again,
Zombies will be cool. That'll be a nice animated show.
um, obviously this news is concerning, but I'm hoping for the best here because I love Blade. I love the story. I love the casting here. This should work. So I'm
Yeah,
crossing my fingers hard.
I think you get a more experienced director in here, and you give yourself a little bit of breathing room. Really, I think the problem is they need to restructure things and spread things out a little more, so that way, there can be more time taken. They're putting the cart way too far before the horse at this
Yeah.
point. They're believing their own hype, and they're still in a space where we can always say that Phase 4 was a dud, and we can move on from here. But we'll see. I mean, right before Halloween ends, I was even telling you, you were like, "Oh, are you gonna go see Black Adam and stuff?" And I was just like, I mean, it's I'll see it at some point, but like, I'm kind of getting that point where I'm a little superheroed out myself. Like I'm a little bit like everything's just kind of feeling samey. You know what I mean? The only thing that I could really say I'm excited for right now is Wakanda Forever, and a good part of that is like I'd say probably most of that is because of Ryan Coogler, because
Yeah.
I'm a fan of his work, and I think that with the insurmountable odds that film has to deal with the passing of Chadwick Boseman, I think that he can overcome that, and the trailers have been really visually stunning, and I'm curious, and I'm excited for that one. So I want that to pan out really well.
Yeah. And
But the rest of this, it's kind of up in the air right now.
yeah, and for me, like I said, I have this fatigue. I really think this darker tone of Marvel stuff could save it for me, but they have to get it on track and kind of set a course that we can stick with.
Oh yeah, they're starting to. A lot of people are starting to say they're going down the path of what DC did, where they're just kind of getting way too far ahead of themselves, and that's hilarious. To quote DC, it's like it's what is the Batman quote? Do you live? You live long enough to see, or what is it? You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
There we go.
You
We
go.
got it.
There it is. All right, moving on.
Alrighty, put on your animal head and turn up the folk music. It's time to go back to Summer Isle to solve another disappearance. A series adaptation to The Wicker Man is being developed by Andy Serkis and his production company. The new series is described as different than the original, but will explore the same themes of sacrifice, superstition, and ritual that were at its core. With the original looked at as an all time classic and a remake that was less than memorable for any good reason, this project will have a lot to live up to. Does this sound like a good idea, or will horror fans join together to sacrifice this adaptation? And, The Wicker Man is something I had only seen a couple years ago. I think it was before Midsummer. I know that because there were kind of just so many comparisons to it. So I'm a fan of the original here. I did see the Nick Cage remake as well, and that one I don't remember too much about, other than the memes that we know of. But I'm intrigued to see where they can go in terms of this long term storytelling. I don't think they said. How many episodes this would get, or if this is just going to be a limited run or an actual like committed series. I'm intrigued to see where they go. Again, looking at like something like Midsummer, where it's a fun space to play in. I love the kind of ritual cult aspect of things, especially kind of being like on this little secluded island and this fish out of water, especially if they're going to go with a full on kind of retelling of that story with a similar concept. I'd be intrigued to see where this goes because it can lead down a lot of different paths.
No, I agree. This is something that I have been meaning to watch for a while. I never got around to seeing it.
Oh, you haven't
Only
seen it
because
yet.
one of my good buddies, Andrew from Review the Right Thing, he had mentioned that I should check out the director's cut.
Hmm.
And it's a little bit of a harder copy to find, and I don't know if you can get it digitally. Actually, I don't think I looked into that. But I do want to see that. He says that that's a more definitive and better version of the film, because apparently they cut down a good bit. But I'm curious that you watched it and you seem to have enjoyed it, and it's you know how I feel about Midsummer. Like that's
Yeah,
probably a lot of people are going to say this. Is a little bit sacrilege. I like that way more than Hereditary, and I love Hereditary.
yeah.
But like that's my Ari Aster movie right there. I fucking love that movie. Um, so it's like, yeah, I'm interested in this. I love the occult stuff. I love kind of, you know, getting into that real like people are kind of in their own society. They do their own little things. And Andy Serkis coming on board to do some more creative stuff, like that's great. Again, we talked about Venom 2. He directed Venom 2, and that was a serviceable film. He added a lot of flair to it. There was definitely some good humor and some interesting stuff that he did with it. But I think Woody Harrelson really shined in that film. And I think that he really those two worked together as actor and director really well, because he let him play that kind of eccentric, crazy man kind of angle. And so it's one of those things where it's like I believe in Andy Serkis as a creative. And I think that, if you're giving him a TV series, then let's go for it. Like, I would love to see what he can do. Because like he is somebody that as he gets a little more comfortable behind the director's chair, I could see really coming in and telling more horror based stories, especially ones that aren't slashers or creature features, but are more on that psychological kind of indoctrination style kind of horror. So it's like I'm curious to see what this series brings us.
I was so pleased with Midsummer walking out of the theater too, and as you so many rewatches of that film, you like it more and more.
Mm-hmm.
And where we're talking about, we've had this flood of, we've seen Terrifier, we've seen Halloween Ends, and um, cosmic horror, and all this other stuff. Where we're kind of getting flooded with that content. Like a lot of the occult stuff is kind of fallen by the wayside over the last couple of years. Midsummer was like the last bigger thing that I had seen that I recall. So I'm intrigued to kind of revisit this kind of concept. And the originals, it's slower, it's methodical. You're living in the space for a while. I'm intrigued to see what they do in terms of a series here, because you can really take your time and open up a lot of things, and kind of establish a lot of different characters in this. So I'm intrigued to kind of have this. It's you're on an island, you're secluded. It's a way different feeling than a lot of the horror that we've been seeing over the past few years. So I really want to see where they're going to take this. Like they're saying, it's still going to have that feeling of the original, but we're going to kind of put a little bit of a new spin on it. So I'm really curious to see where they're going to go with it. Again, we keep jumping back to Midsummer, but it was such a great almost modernization of Wicker Man.
It's a wonderful film.
Yeah,
Like, I love it, dude.
and it twisted itself just enough to you can say, okay, this is inspired by, but it's also its own unique thing. Um, and I know that kind of had our brains going in terms of maybe potentially doing something in that realm of writing something. So it's like
You have
there's
a
a
concept. I'm sorry to cut you off, but yeah, that you have a concept that I would love to bring to screen one day.
in
The- it was really interesting and intriguing. I wish there was some way we could really share it with you guys, because I think it's a really good idea. I think at that point it was really only a nugget.
yeah.
We didn't flush it out too deep, but like that still sits in my mind. That day you pitched that to me at the gym, like that was cool.
And again, and there's so much that you can apply in terms of like current world stuff and jumping it into that kind of ideas of the occult and living in on a secluded island and doing your own thing there. So it's like you can really do a lot here. I'm intrigued to see where they're going to go. Um, the original has a lot of great tension. I'm excited for you to see it. I really when
I'll watch it. I
yeah,
mean, like I didn't realize you were so into it because it's one
I'm
of
a
those things where I didn't know that you had even seen it.
yeah. I'm a big fan of it. Uh, we'll probably do it for Splattercast then at one point.
Mhm.
It's just like one of those things where I like I'm not against the modernization of it, but I think this came out in the '70s, and it feels like a '70s film, and I would hate for them to lose that a little more. So maybe they can kind of do something in terms of a spin to make it feel like that. But I'm intrigued to see where they go with this. I was so excited to see when this got announced because this is something where that Nick Cage thing has become such a meme.
Yeah,
For
you want to put some respect back on the Wicker Man name.
yes, and a kind of a modern retelling of the story so that newer fans can discover this one and kind of be inspired by it. I'm really excited to see where this is going to go.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely check as we're running through the show here to see if that's available. That director's cut is available, but I'll at this point, with your blessing here, man, I'm gonna probably go and just check out the standard release too, because like it sounds like
Yeah, I don't think I've seen the director's cut. I think I own the normal version. I'll have to go dig it out of my shelf over there, but I think it's just the basic version.
and just so everybody knows, I just looked it up, and it is, yep, the one from 75 is available as a part of the killer deals on Vudu
Is it
this
really
weekend. Yep, 4.99, baby. So
worth every penny?
there you go. So I'll probably snag that. I will definitely go upstairs and grab my card and do that after this, because that's a great review, I should say, without giving me any of the details away. I'm, you know, you don't have to sway me. If you like something, I'm gonna want to check it out because we're gonna want to discuss it. So,
Of
but yeah,
course. So
Andy Serkis again, I think is a really great creative guy. I mean, just the work that he brought in, not only just like his filmmaking stuff that he's been doing the last few years, but the work that he's brought into motion capture and kind of what he
yes,
did to that world and how far he helped advance that as an art. Like his performances in those Planet of the Apes movies, dude, like that, War for the Planet of the Apes was a little slower. It was a little different than I think anybody was expecting. I still really enjoy that movie, but like that trilogy is excellent. I love it,
absolutely.
especially Dawn. Like Dawn is such a fucking great film. Like it bookends itself so well, and he gives such a wonderful performance as a CGI monkey. I know that's weird to say, but when you have me literally almost in tears for a CGI monkey, you know you have done something special. And
Yes.
yeah, hey, did you see that they just showed some stills for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes? It's going to be they're continuing that story.
No, I did
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, you'll
I'm
have
gonna
to
have to
look at
check
it. It's
those out.
just a still. They announced that it's in production. I forget who's a part of it. I know this isn't horror news, but I mean, we
We've been
definitely are
discussing Marvel,
fans.
so we're uh,
Yeah.
we're
We're
jumping all over the place this episode.
we're kind of
Um,
doing our thing. But yeah, continue on. I will get we'll bookend this and get back to it because it's I think that if I remember correctly, the director is actually pretty impressive too.
And one more thing about Andy Serkis, where you're talking about the motion capture and that kind of thing, that's where it also gets me excited because his as a storyteller is so complete, where it's not just dialogue based, where it's like he understands the importance of movement and everything like that. So it's like in terms of like direction and things like that, I think you can get a complete story out of everything because he makes everything count. So I'm really intrigued to see where this is going to go. It sounds like that they're putting a lot of importance on it. I know there haven't been any details as to where it's going to be released or anything like that, but I'm intrigued. Hopefully, it's like a streaming service so that we can kind of get a full, Wicker Man is not something that you can put on regular television. So I'm intrigued to see where this is going to end up. Like we talked about, Hulu's been really knocking out of the park with a lot of this horror stuff lately. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it end up in the Hulu camp at some point.
Oh yeah, and so it wasn't the director. The director is Wes Ball, which he's fine. He did the Maze Runner trilogy.
Okay.
So it's like he's a fine director. He's just never done anything that's really jumped out to me. Now, what it was the it was the original two writers of that trilogy, the Apes trilogy, are coming back. Those two, Amanda Silver and Rick Jaffa. And then it's another writer called Josh Friedman. I don't know much about him, but what caught my eye when I was looking into this was Patrick Eason, I think is how you say it. But he he helped co-write Prey.
Oh,
So yeah, he's got a big check in my book right now for helping bring that to screen. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, that could show that at least they have the people who wrote the last trilogy here. They have another good up and coming writer here, and Wes Ball. He has, like I said, I'm neither here nor there on the Maze Runner movies. A lot of people like them. I only ever saw the first one, but it's one of those things where it's like, and it wasn't a bad movie. It just wasn't for me. But I think visually he's got a good style, and I think he could really break out and do something cool here. So let's see.
we'll see what happens. I'm intrigued to see where we go with this.
Yeah, maybe we bring Andy Serkis back, not as Caesar, but maybe give him another monkey role. He did great.
Yeah, I'll go see it regardless.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's hop into our last bit of news here. As Halloween Ends hits theaters and David Gordon Green has put the Smiths Grove slasher to bed for now, John Carpenter has mentioned what would get him back into the director's chair. With so many of his properties rich with atmosphere, Carpenter doesn't want to revisit Haddonfield or Hobbs End, unfortunately. He would have a set sight on a video game adaptation of Dead Space, a science fiction horror-based video game. This isn't the first time he's mentioned taking this video game franchise to the big screen. His love affair dates back all the way to 2013. If Carpenter sits back down and turns on the camera, is this the right property for his return? Dylan, I don't know too much about video games. So this is kind of your bread and butter in terms of Dead Space. So give us the ideas here.
Okay, I will have to at least. I'm not a die-hard Dead Space expert.
Oh, come on, Dylan.
I know of Dead Space. I am excited to play the remake, and I played a little bit of the games with my buddy Adrian, who he was the one I have to credit with introducing me to this franchise, because he's a massive Dead Space fan. And as far as survival horror games go, it's those first two. They, for modern survival horror, you can't beat them. They are in equal parts intriguing in their story, the way they present it, and just the creatures and everything that they introduce is so cool. It's very Event Horizon with a little touches of The Thing and Alien, and it's kind of all of your favorite kind of space horror films rolled into one, I like to say.
Does it all take place on a spaceship?
So yes, they do. The first one at least takes place on one ship.
Okay.
It's the I believe it was called the Ishimura. And basically what ends up happening is the way it's, and I'll just read it here because it'll sum it up a little better than I think I can. The ship is overrun by necromorphs, forcing Isaac to defend himself by weaponizing his mining tools and resource integration gear. So basically, it's a mining ship, and he has to kind of make his own weapons to kind of fight these things. Now, these necromorphs are like humans that turn into these these monstrous things with like real pointy arms, and they bust out of them very alien like.
Okay.
But it's more like the human body is morphing and contorting into this thing, and it's so creepy, man. It's all atmosphere, it's all horror and tension, and it's some of the goriest and creepiest and scariest shit you'll ever play. Now, the first game is getting a from the ground remake that's coming out here shortly. I think it's only on PlayStation. I'm gonna double check that, but it's one of those things where it's like, if we ever kind of go down, I know that I've been thinking about and kind of talking about with the PC here and everything about going down that rabbit hole of doing some gameplay, doing something. I think this would be a really great game for you and I to sit down and play together, because I think this would be right up your alley, Luke.
Yeah.
And the fact that Carpenter has wanted to do this for so long and hasn't gotten the chance, is upsetting to me, because I'd love to see his take on this. Because that's the thing about Carpenter. That dude fucking loves video games. He plays video games like crazy. He's a huge Halo fan and everything. And so it's like, if you're going to get a video game adaptation done right, fucking put Carpenter in there. And I mean, like, I'm a Carpenter fanboy, so it's like I probably am putting too many eggs in that basket because of how video game movies have gone. But like, damn, like, I'd love to see him do that, because he would be really ripe for that material when it comes to the tension and the slow build of it.
Yeah, and when this first was, you kind of hit headlines because I haven't followed this in terms of dating back to 2013. So when I had seen this headline, I kind of I flinched a little bit because I know how video game adaptations have typically gone. So I wasn't really sure if going that route with it would be, the right way to go if Carpenter ever decided to come back and direct something. But like, as you're explaining to me what the ideas are here and how he's such a big fan, that I would have faith that he would be able to do it justice and kind of create the tension that is needed here. Because obviously, if you're comparing this concept to The Thing, who's better than to kind of reroute that kind of idea for a video game? So I'm intrigued to see where this would go if he would ever get the shots. Now that we're talking about it and Carpenter showed the interest, I don't see Dead Space becoming an actual film without Carpenter's attachment, because how would you not, especially if you call it John Carpenter's Dead Space? I mean, it's gonna sell itself. It's gonna be, people are gonna show up, just to be able to see his take on this. And this kind of space here really does seem like something he could excel at and kind of create the tension that it's needed. Just kind of going back to his old playbook and knowing what works here. And he's always excelled at that kind of horror-based science fiction. I mean, we all know his filmography, so this is like right up his alley in terms of being able to kind of create that story for film. So I would be really intrigued to see what he would do with this. I'm just intrigued to see if Carpenter would ever actually come back in take on a property or something, because Dead Space, I guess at a certain point, does seem almost as an undertaking. And I know how Carpenter's kind of had his battles with kind of creativeness and kind of going where he wants to go with certain things. So I wonder if he had too many masters to please, especially coming right out of the gates and saying, this is what I want to undertake. So I'm intrigued to see where this would go. I know a lot of people kind of with Carpenter's filmography always say, hey, let's revisit such and such, but I don't really think that's the route you go anymore. I think you kind of just let his stuff live as it standalones and let him focus on something different.
Yeah, and just so you can get kind of a visual thing here, I went and pulled up the remake stuff so you can kind of see this. I'm only going to show a brief clip just of what they kind of look like, but I feel like I'm not doing it as big a justice here. But this is kind of the atmosphere and the tone that we're messing with. Like, you can see it's very much just, a lot of flashlights, a lot of, like, you're looking, and then here's that's a little tiny guy, but look at that.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, and like, this is just like, this was from a few months ago, I believe. So like, it's even going to look even better when it drops. And I did check, it comes out January 23rd is the set release date now.
Okay.
We know with video games that can change. But like, yeah, I think this would be a lot of fun on the channel. If you guys are interested in seeing us maybe hop on here and having Luke experience this story for the first time, I think this would be really cool, because I think you'd be a fan
I
of
would
this
love
lore.
to. I don't even care about the consensus. I say let's just do it.
Yeah, because
I would love to just watch this and see where the story goes, to be honest.
yeah, because it's very creepy. It's very atmospheric, as you can tell, and it's just like, look at some of this
I
shit.
mean, yeah,
Like,
this would be up Carpenter's alley if he ever actually wanted to commit to something like this and they greenlighted this. And I think this would be, there's certainly a market for this. It's just kind of like one of those things where trying to fit this in, and again, we're full circle where we started this podcast or this show talking about long form storytelling and Haddonfield. It's like, this was another one that could easily be a 10 episode thing of its own, because there's probably so much content there to cover.
There's a good
I,
bit. I don't know necessarily if you'd want to do. I feel like in my mind, I think the stories are done well enough. There's a little breathing room there, especially with those first two. And it's like I don't have any issue with 3. I don't want people to rip me up in the comments. I know that has its defenders. 3 just goes for very much of a more actiony kind of
not as horror
sense.
based.
It's not really as horror based. There's elements of it, but it really goes for the bigger creatures on a planet kind of thing. It really kind of strays from those close quarters horror. Like, as you can see, you just have a light on your mining tool
Claustrophobia.
and you're doing like, yeah, it's some really creepy good shit. So yeah, I'd love to do that and just play it a little bit, because it will be on PC, so I can definitely get it on here and we can do some live streaming of us running through that. And like I said, you get to experience that for the first time, and I think that would be a good way for you to get some video games under your belt, because
There we go.
that's, I know we're both pretty terrible at it. I'm a little better than you when it comes to playing them, but even I tend to, if I don't
Yeah.
have the motivation, I'll drop it and not come back to it for a long time. But if we're both playing it, then maybe we can get it done.
And it's something where I really wish I can get on board. I really want to, because there's so much great storytelling in video games nowadays, that I just want to experience those story arcs, and I never fully commit to it. Well, hardly ever commit to any of it, but it's such a blind spot for me in terms of storytelling, which I really want to get into it, especially if it's such a big inspiration now in terms of uh, those kinds of stories being brought over into television and film.
Yeah, it is quite an experience, man. I think you'll enjoy it. And I mean, I was just looking when we were talking here, just the graphical comparison on EA's website, and I'm just sitting here like, damn, it really looked that bad, because like the way I remember it, it didn't look nearly
Yeah.
that blocky. It looked scary as fuck. So like, it's one of those things. And I think I have a little bit of deeper memories of Dead Space 2 than Dead Space 1, but it's one of those things where it's like I would love to see not only this get its remake, but Dead Space 2. And I think Dead Space 2's story is really quite cool. And I think that would be a nice one. So if Carpenter could ever get this off the ground, do I think it's going to happen? Probably not. I mean, he talks about a lot of projects coming up, but seems like he just never commits to that. And, it's like, why would he? He's got such a legacy. He can really do whatever he wants once he gets the right people behind him. But it's kind of like, does he really want to step into the director's chair? Who knows? I'd love to see it, though.
Yeah, I mean, and I could see him coming back for one swan song, just to put an end cap on it, because the last thing he did was The Ward, I believe. I haven't seen it, but I don't think it was too critically acclaimed at all. So it's like, I would love for him to get something that he wants to do, something that he would enjoy, kind of having some creative control over it, with the story that he wants to tell, and then just put an end cap on his career, because the man had such a great career going from all through the 80s and even into a little bit of the 90s there, that it's like, for him to kind of just peter out and not really get that last film under his belt would be a travesty.
Yeah, and I think we'll definitely get something from Carpenter again. I just I don't know what exactly it's going to be, and I'm curious for when that day finally does come, of what quality we're going to get. So
Yeah, we'll see.
But hey,
Time will tell.
absolutely, we shall see. So, alrighty, I guess that's going to bring us into my segment, which we like to call this week's Gorecast.
The top of the world, fabulous 1340 KAV, Antonio Bay.
Alrighty, guys, so this is the Gorecast, where we just basically talk about everything that is coming out or going on, announcements for home media, all kinds of great and crazy shit. And I'll just throw it out there right up front. We don't really have any significant new releases in the horror realm this week coming to theaters. I know we've had a really strong run as we've gone on here when it comes to theater releases. So I was looking through trying to figure out what's going to come out. Nothing really stuck out to me. There might be a thing or two on streaming that I may have overlooked. So if I did, I apologize. The only thing that really, I think, caught my eye, and it says limited, so I don't officially know when it's supposed to come out. I believe it should be this weekend, is Wendell and Weil. No,
Oh.
that comes out on the 28th. My bad.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a limited run, I guess, in
In the
theaters for
theaters?
that.
Okay.
Yeah, this weekend. So that I just wanted to double check that. So yeah, it's not looking like there's much hitting us there. So unfortunately,
Scarcity.
yeah, it's but hey, we got a lot of great stuff out in theaters right now. I'll say it. I mean, more of you guys are probably going to want to go check out Halloween Ends and see that again, give it another go. It's a very divisive film, so definitely go give it a watch. Let us know what you guys think. If you absolutely love it, I'm really happy for you. It didn't really hit for us, but I think that there are still some good ideas in there, and it's fucking Michael Myers to an extent on screen. So it's like you get a little bit of that. So might as well, since it's the last time we'll get him for a while.
Yeah.
And then you've also got things like Barbarian still in theaters, and Smile is doing really well. Terrifier 2, they extended its run, so if you can catch that, definitely
Glad to
go
see
see
it.
it. Yeah, no, always great to see that going on. But as far as recent announcements go for releases, not only was Black Christmas announced here, it's coming out on December 6th on 4K from Shout Factory, which is really cool. The cover looks amazing. I'm
That's a
excited for that one.
2019?
Yeah, that's you wish. That is the 74 version.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I know you're a big fan of the 2019 one.
Doesn't get any better.
You need to clarify that, otherwise people are going to unsubscribe. But we also have Smile, which I just mentioned, is coming out on December 13th. So you'll have that one to look forward to. Not a bad flick, definitely intriguing. I was pretty interested in it. I don't think it sold me entirely, but I didn't give it a negative review. I was definitely saying, hey, if it came out I think you said it best, where if it came out in a lesser year, I might have been a little bit more positive about it, but I think just with the stellar year we've had in horror, it just didn't quite reach those heights that I was hoping it would.
Yeah, there was just so much unique stuff out there that worked so well that this one kind of just fell by the wayside a little bit.
But again, not a bad movie.
No,
It's
not at all.
definitely got some intriguing concepts, and it was executed very well. So, maybe in the coming years I'll watch it again and I'll appreciate it more. That's the beauty of film.
Give
So.
it one of those reappraisals, as they say.
Oh yeah, another good one that's hitting on December 13th as well is Carrie is coming to 4K, the original 1976 version, since we have to specify now. Because otherwise Luke's going to think it's the remake.
I always assumed that the remakes are coming out, never the original.
He never wants that. And then they also, just to get ahead of everything, they did announce that Halloween Ends will be coming out on December 27th on 4K and Blu-ray and all that good stuff. It's getting,
Just
of
missing
course,
Christmas.
it's of course it's getting a Best Buy exclusive steelbook, as it has in the past, and it actually looks pretty neat. But I don't know if I want to spend the $35 on a steelbook for a movie that I wasn't super in love with. But yeah, it's kind of neat that that's coming out then, considering I think the last two we had to wait till like January for those to come out on
I don't
4K.
remember.
Pretty sure I waited till January on those ones. I think that was where they landed. But those are a couple of the announcements. And then I'm going to hop over to Dawn of the Disc, who always seem to have the best stuff when it comes to what's coming out. Studio Canal announces, and this is kind of a not a horror film, but a genre film that I absolutely adore, is the 19 what was it, the 70 was it was 70 something here, 1976 King Kong is coming to 4K. I actually adore that movie. I think it's a pretty good interpretation. If you need to know my thoughts on it, I don't think any of the King Kong remakes are bad. I don't think there's a bad King Kong movie.
I've only seen the newest ones.
You never seen the original?
No.
Ooh, that's not a horror movie, but I'd love to rectify that for you at some point. That's still a great movie. I have it on Blu-ray.
Okay, I'll watch it. I didn't ignore it, but it just was
Just
something I never got around to.
Never got around to it. Tisk tisk, my boy. But then other things that
Cool.
are hitting us as well, announcement wise. And that doesn't have an official release date yet. That's just stating that it'll be coming out hopefully before the end of the year.
Can I cut you off 1 second? Because you have me looking at these killer deals now on Voodoo, and Orca, the killer whale,
Yes.
$4.99.
Yep, I was going to bring that up. I was
Sorry.
going to touch on the killer deals. No problem at all. Yeah, that was going to be one of my big recommendations for the week, because that is awesome. I'm happy to see that for $4.99, because I think when that's not on sale, it's like $15.
It's a
on there.
rarity, isn't it?
It
It's
is.
not easy to come by ever.
No, not on DVD. It was re-released by Scream Factory like a year ago or so. I have yet to pick my copy up. I want it so bad. I do love that. As far as the Jaws exploitation films go, that's one of the better ones. But yeah, it's a good one, and I definitely plan on owning it at some point. But actually, a pretty cool thing, I guess, depending on how you look at it, is from Vestron Video, we'll be getting Silent Night, Deadly Night 3, 4, and 5 all coming to Blu-ray. I haven't seen any of these. I've only seen the first two. I enjoy the first two as, the so bad they're good kind of horror flicks, and I'd love to cover them on the show. But I would be remiss by saying that these would probably, if I can get them, would just be instant pickups for me, just on the namesake alone, and just how goofy these movies tend to be.
Yeah.
And I just think that they'd be a whole lot of fun, no matter how trashy and horrible I'm sure they get as they go along.
This is a blind spot for me. I own the first one. I haven't watched it yet.
Really?
Yeah, I've
Oh,
been meaning to.
Pretty solid, my boy.
I think honestly I've had that copy. I think I thought I got it around last Christmas, and I never committed to it. So it is one that I plan on, as you say, rectifying here in the next few months.
We talk about running a little Christmas special here. We've been doing the Splatterthon. We're kind of in talks about doing some Christmas stuff, so that could be on the docket. There's a couple of really solid Christmas horror films that we've been tossing around,
and we love our Christmas horror.
We do. So one of these years, if not this year, we'll definitely be talking Silent Night, Deadly Night flicks.
Absolutely.
And then another thing I wanted to follow up with is that the Beyond Genres, I'm not 100% sure what that is. No, that's Umbrella Entertainment. So this is just part of their Beyond Genres line. The way they have that posted is a little strange. They will actually be releasing King Kong Lives, which is the sequel to the 76 film. So it's kind of getting spread across a couple different companies, but you're able to get your King Kong movies. You're going to be able to complete that set all on Blu-ray, which is pretty cool in my opinion. And then I think the only other couple things were coming down to the wire here. Like I said, there was a ton of interesting shit that got announced this week. The big one that I wanted to highlight for, and we can kind of stop and discuss a little bit, is Terrifier 2 is officially getting its Blu-ray coming out in December as well. And that bad boy is getting a Walmart exclusive steelbook.
Wild.
And yeah, no, that's pretty cool though, man. And it's only, I know we talked about it in the theater, but when I went to look at it here, Luke, afterwards, it's only $19.96.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So literally, it's a low budget film, and they're taking care of their fans, and they're not charging an arm and a leg for a fucking steelbook. So you know what? I will probably pick the steelbook up for this, because why not at that price? You know what I mean?
You know what?
It is nice to say it is releasing the unrated version. So it's not like we have to get it censored or anything. So the version we saw in theaters during the Fathom event is the version we'll be getting our hands on.
I am going to show up for that one as well. I can't, they say vote for your wallet. With your wallet, like, I'm glad that we did for Terrifier 2, and it's getting the recognition that, it is right now. And to have something like this being released as, what did you say, a Walmart exclusive?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
For this to be like a Walmart exclusive steelbook like that, for this film to get something like that, I will gladly vote with my wallet again on that one.
Mm-hmm. It's really cool. It's something you love to see. I love the attention this film's getting. And, it has got to be said that we went to see that for the channel and for you guys. We went in there not expecting to really enjoy that film as much as we did because we weren't big on the first one. But man, I gotta say, especially coming off of how Halloween Ends worked out for us specifically, I'm happy I did because that's another one that I think will probably end up on my best horror of the year list because it has not left my head since we saw the theater. I still think about it a lot. I still love the characters in it. I think again that the main actress there she was wonderful. And it's crazy to me, the story of this film. It gets kickstarted, gets made by the fans for the fans. 2 hours and 30 something minutes comes out, and it's getting all this love and attention and making all this money at the box office. It's great. It's such a great thing to see for the horror community.
Yeah, and I mean they're pulling out all the stops. They're taking care of the fans. I think they're really showing that they appreciate what the fans are doing for them. Just a 2.5 hour film for us to drive. 40 minutes or whatever it was to go see this film. I mean, sometimes you're sorry you made the trip because it just wasn't that quality of a film. But you tell me Terrifier 2's playing again, I'll make another 40-minute trip to see it. So it was well worth it.
Oh yeah, I mean, if it was a lesser year as far as releases, yeah, I think we could have definitely committed to see that again, to show up or something like that. And then the last thing I'll bring up before we close out this segment is that 88 Films. They're a company I'm not super familiar with. They are releasing some 4Ks of movies that I'm not super familiar with. I know of one of these, but their artwork is intriguing alone. I know they say never to judge a book by its cover, but in the horror community, you see an intriguing poster, and that can really sell you on what you're picking up. And they announced Zombie Holocaust and Burial Ground on 4K coming from them. And these are some interesting looking flicks. I'm just to illustrate my point, I'll do the old sharing the screen, and then we can also take a look at that Terrifier Steelbook real quick, just to throw it up here, because again, I have been so busy that I didn't make a Gorecast card because I am garbage, but I love you guys. Please forgive me.
You piece of trash.
But here we go, just so you guys can see what we're dealing with. But yeah, I don't know, man. Something about this and this. I think if I saw these at a local video store, I might try to grab them just to check them out. They're
true.
intriguing.
That Burial Ground one is looking pretty serious right there. I'm not even gonna lie.
Mm-hmm. And then that Line of Duty is also coming on Blu-ray. And these are UK, but they are region free.
Oh, okay.
And then let's take a look at the Art the Clown goodness here. So yeah, we got the Steelbook coming to you here, and there's the artwork. I love the back of that. Just that's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. I thought that was so fucking funny when he was doing that, and also the tension they built before. It's a great poster. And then the inside of the Steelbook.
Oh, I love the inside.
Mm-hmm. Playing on the set there, and with her there, it's just really excellent stuff. So that's going to be an essential pickup for us. I'd love to get Damien Leone on here to talk for just a little bit, to interview him about this process and getting this film made, and getting all his films made. I will admit that I reached out to him on Instagram, but I'm sure he's getting flooded with messages.
Yeah.
So maybe at some point down the road, as the channel gets bigger, we can flag him down. But I'd love to just sit with him for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and just talk about his work and where he's going with everything, and just talk Terrifier. Because again, and I don't tend to shy away from this, it's like I will admit that we were not huge on his first film, but the fact that his other film swung us so heavy, that's a feat. I mean, like
Oh, absolutely.
that's insane. You know, like I'm on board with Art the Clown. I hope and pray every day that a NECA figure gets announced.
How wonderful would that be?
Oh, it would be so fun. And speaking of NECA figures, the last little bit of news that I have here was pretty fun. So as we looked last week, and we talked about all the stuff that they were doing. They're doing their 31 days or whatever they call it. It's the 31 Nights of Fright, with them releasing all their images of upcoming NECA figures and everything. Boom, baby.
I was so excited when he sent this to me.
I know.
So good.
Yep, Prey, baby. We're getting the Predator from Prey here. Super awesome to see. Not too many images, but we get the full body there. The usual Predator articulation. Now, the thing that really intrigued me, all the accessories we're getting. So this looks like it's going to split together. So you can have it as the full spear and bow staff.
Oh, yeah.
Or you can do it as he did in the film and split it. You have the shield, but also the collapsed shield. So he can have it on his arm walking around if you choose to display him like that. The gun for the laser, the little chain blade thing. And yeah, it's just everything's here. This is a complete package. This is exactly what I was looking for from this. And I believe I watched a video. I don't know the channel name, unfortunately. It was a quick little video I watched, so I'm sorry, but I think there was some hinting towards the fact that NECA was saying we might get more from Prey.
Oh,
so
okay.
People are kind of speculating maybe a Naru figure with the dog, and that would be kind of neat too. I'd love to have
that would be a
her.
lot of fun.
So I mean, like all in all, it's a win, baby. Like I'm excited to have it. Like this is a good day. This is a
I
good,
will be
good
picking
time.
that one up. I'm still waiting on that Shaman Predator that we talked about months ago.
I know.
This one I'm very excited to add to the collection. That bastard better not fall off my shelf like half these other Predators do. But I'm excited to own that one for sure.
No, I'm right there with you. And yeah, once that Shaman Predator, once we can get our hands on that, man, like we'll have to, and we'll do a review on that bad boy, because that's one of those things where it's like that really that's got such a unique design, and I'm so excited to see that and get that in hands. I'm actually just gonna see if they've updated when that's gonna be coming out.
Last time I checked, it was November.
Is it November now? I think it was initially supposed to come out in August. That's the thing that's kind of upsetting me. It says it's still saying October on Big Bad Toy Store's website. Okay. Yeah, October 2022.
I thought I saw maybe on Entertainment Earth or something. It said November, but I don't know.
It could 100%. Be. Yeah, sometimes they're all over the place. Some websites get told different things. For me, though, looking at this pricing, I might wait till Target starts getting them in, because Big Bad Toy Store is trying to sell that thing for $42, and that's yeah, they're getting quite pricey. So, but hey, that's what you get, as long as they stop breaking when you're just trying to pose them, or they fall off your shelf and snap and things.
Dylan, we know you're playing with your figures way too much.
I am not. They sit on the shelf back there, okay? And then they
liar.
All right. But that's going to conclude this week's Scorecast, guys. Thank you so much for spending some time with me here. I'm glad I could get all that out. So, like I said, no new releases in theaters, but I hope I made up with it with all those Blu-ray announcements, because it was quite a week with all that going on.
Yeah, quite a week for the Gorecast, quite a week for horror, and quite a week for the Sunday Scaries, I suppose. Decent amount of news, nothing totally wild, I would say. Biggest news was the Halloween Ends. So mild week in the news, but we got some interesting things going on here. Maybe Carpenter makes his comeback. We'll see what happens. A lot of different things going on in the horror community, which is always the beauty of doing one of these episodes.
Oh yeah, I always look forward to them. It's a nice end of the week conversation for you guys, and we always seem to be getting close to about 100 views an episode, so I hope it's still worth it to you guys.
Always a fun time. And I think that's going to about wrap us up here. Again, our condolences and our thoughts are with the family of Ted White.
Mm.
Truly lost a legend there. Can't say more positive enough things for Mr. Ted White. But yep, we will be back here next week with a lot more horror news. So, Dylan, why don't you give us the socials?
Alrighty, guys. So, of course, as always, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at SplattercastPod, where we're posting all the latest and greatest when it comes to the current topics and conversations in horror. As well as you can check out the channel. We got a lot of great content out there right now. I just had my video essay, The Night He Almost Came Home, is up on the channel and doing very well. I really appreciate all the positive feedback that I've gotten from you guys there. The views just keep climbing on it. You seem really responsive. That was a total labor of love. I mean, we had Ben Collins came back and he tweeted that and mentioned that it was cool to see. So that was literally the most I could have ever asked for when it comes to releasing something like that, that it was acknowledged from the writer himself. And that was super cool. And just so you guys know, posting a little bit later today, we will be having our interview with the writer of The Phantom Limbs, Jason Jenkins. So that's a super cool video as well. That was an awesome conversation. Jason's a wonderful guy who gave us all the insights on not only, his feelings and thoughts towards the Ben Collins and Luke Petrowski script, but also the, just Phantom Limbs in general. If you guys are avid horror fans, especially interested in unproduced horror, he has got like an unmatched catalog of stories when it comes to just stuff that he can find. He's literally like just finds these diamonds in the rough of stories of unproduced works, and like he does a massive deep dive. The dude's a wealth of information, and it was such a joy to have him on. It was about a month ago that we recorded that now, but like, dude, I'm still just goosebumps just thinking that guy came on and even talked to us.
It was wonderful hearing him talk and get those insights of what it takes to make those articles, where he gets those ideas from, who he has to contact. And if you haven't read those Phantom Limbs articles, highly recommend. It's one of those things where me and Dylan always talk about potential and what could be, and reading those articles gets the hairs on the back of your neck standing up. Of your brain starts going of, oh, maybe you could do this, maybe you could do that, and next thing you know, you're at your computer writing down a treatment for a script. So it's like, highly recommend those. They're entertaining and they get your brain going. Really one of those nice treats in the horror community.
Oh yeah, and that's pretty much everything current that we have. We also have our hour and a half long breakdown discussion. We said it at the top of the show of Halloween Ends. If you want to go not scene by scene, but for the most part, going through every section of the movie with us and getting our in-depth thoughts. And, we kind of vented and got a lot of our frustrations out, but we also talked about some positives, getting all that out on the table in front of you. If you've seen the film and you just want to get involved in the conversation on that, please check that out. It was a whole lot of fun to do. I just wish that as a spoiler discussion, it could have been all sunshine and rainbows for us. But hey,
It could
if
have
you
been.
love the movie, I'm super happy for you. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. Go see it as many times as you can. Like I said, I'll be seeing it again here in a couple hours. So, even though I didn't like it, it's still getting my money a couple times, and it'll probably get it a lot more. So, that's just where I am. I'm a Michael diehard. So,
Oh, what can you do? I'm right
oh
there
yeah.
with you, sir.
Alrighty, but we will be back here again next week with the episode of the Sunday Scaries. So, Luke, you got anything for him?
Now stay tuned. Another busy week coming at you with the Splatterthon. A lot more content coming your way. Yeah, another Better Off Dead. Covering another episode of Chucky. So we got a lot still to come here. About what mid month. So we
Yep.
still got a few weeks left. Still going strong. Getting that wear and tear feeling, but it's spooky season. We are making the most of it.
100%. And also, we got to mention it. We do have a giveaway going. I straightened up my office here, so I moved my mug across the room, unfortunately, like a dumbass. But Luke can show you that we are giving away a copy of the Black Phone as well as a Splatterthon mug. So that way you guys can get your hands on that. All you have to do is click the link down below that indicates the giveaway, and then you can go ahead and enter into that for a chance to win both of those on a live stream that we'll be doing on Halloween. So lots of fun, lots of cool stuff, guys. And yeah, so I think that's about wrapping us up. Luke, you want to take us out?
Well, we will be back here next week with all your horror news blended and ready for your consumption into a nice horror smoothie just for you. But until then, I'm Luke Janesco.
And I'm Dylan Newell.
And friends, stay scared.